Hello and welcome back to the Clayden Principle for EPC Contracts. We're going to have a quick talk here about insolvency, problems for everybody. Before we start, please like, share and subscribe. In the simplest of terms, insolvency means being unable to pay debts as and when they fall due. It is often, but not always, a liquidity or cash flow problem which can affect even wealthy companies in difficult trading conditions. This section deals with corporate insolvency under construction contracts. Bankruptcy is individual insolvency and applies to sole traders and partnerships, that is, non-incorporated entities. Problems for all. Insolvency of a contractor is generally an event outside the control of the owner, unless of course the owner himself has contributed to the problem by delayed payment or non-payment. Now it's important to note that either party can become insolvent. It is, however, more common that the contractor becomes insolvent, and this section concentrates on contractors' insolvency with a brief mention of owners' insolvency. Whatever has happened, it will cost the owner, the employer, more, and the contractor's revenue, of course, will also be affected. The owner will usually be aware of the contractor's financial difficulties before any formal announcement. There may have been rumours. There may be observable reduction of the contractor's resources of labour or of plant or deliveries of materials to site. But matters concerning insolvency should, naturally, be kept confidential. Safeguarding the site, the works, equipment and materials on site. The site will probably be closed by the owner. No materials or plant shall be removed. An understanding of the position regarding ownership of materials according to the contract or local law is therefore important. In practice, it is probably safest to assume that all materials on the site and plant and equipment are in the ownership of the employer, and to allow nobody on the site under any pretext whatsoever. It will then be up to the contractor's liquidator or administrator to prove that ownership in particular materials or plant has not become vested in the employer, and even that, of course, is subject to the conditions of contract. Assuming that the contractor's employment has been terminated, the most obvious way of completing the contract is by employing another contractor, if possible on terms similar to those of the first. Of course, the completing contractor is unlikely to execute the remaining works for that price similar to that of the failed contractor. Naturally, any difference between the original contract price and the actual cost to the employer falls to the charge of the original contractor, supplemented by any recovery possible from bonds and guarantees. Assuming that the bonds are on-demand bonds, the owner can be expected to call these at once. By the way, it's worth stating that a bond which is not an on-demand bond is hardly worth the bother. From the owner's point of view, they should be avoided. Now, although sureties may be available for paying the employer such extra money as may be necessary to complete the job, they have no control over the way in which the contract is completed. However, any employer should complete the work without undue extravagance, and it would be prudent to keep the surety informed as the work proceeds. The key factor where a party becomes insolvent is to follow the procedure set out in the contract. FIDIC 2017, for example, sets out very clear procedures under clause 15.2, termination for contractor's default, and stating, the employer shall be entitled to give a notice, which shall state that it is given under this subclause 15.2.1 to the contractor of the employer's intention to terminate the contract, or, in the case of subparagraph F, G, or H below, a notice of termination if the contractor becomes insolvent or bankrupt, goes into liquidation, administration, reorganization, winding up, or dissolution, becomes subject to the appointment of a liquidator, receiver, administrator, manager, or trustee, enters into a composition or arrangement with the contractor's creditors, or any act is done or any event occurs which is analogous to or has a similar effect to any of those acts or events under applicable laws. That's very comprehensive. In essence, the owner has the right to terminate the contract. It then goes on to explain in detail the actions to be taken by the parties. Well, as always, thank you for watching the Clayden Principle. Please like, share and subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you in the next edition. Thank you again for watching.